Belki 3 yıl.
अमेरिका में
Zananca.
3 टॉक्स हैं आज पहले
हैं?
3 टॉक्स हैं अनत्ता पे पहले टॉक
आज पहली सुनाओ. घंटे छटा. कुछ नहीं गर्म छोटा सा खाने दो
गर्म हुआ है
आ रही है थोड़ी सी
गर्म हुआ है
पता नहीं देखो इस टाइम नहीं होगी तो शाम के टाइम किताब देखनी.
इसी को कर लिया आगे कर तो
ठीक है
दिख रहा है
हाँ जामी से बोझ नहीं मारने आई तो लौट से करते जामी बोझ नहीं मारने
It's high.
कितनी
High, high.
हाँ फर्क है इनके नस्बत लेंगे chanting page 14. Yoso bhagava araham samma sambuddho svakhato yena bhagavata dhammo supatipanno yas bhagavato savak sangho tamayam bhagavantam sadammam sasangam imehi sakari yatha arham aropite abhipujayama sadhuno bhanti bhagava suci parinibhutopi pachima janata nukampamanasa ime sakari दुर्गत पणाकार भूते पटिगणातु अम्हाकं दीघतं हिताय सुखाय अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो भगवा बुद्धं भगवन्तम् अभिवादेमि स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मो धम्मं नमस्सामि सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो संघं नमामि हन्मयं बुद्धस्य भगवतो उपभाग नमकारं करोमसि नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स हन्मयं बुद्धानुसतिनयं करोमसे तं खूपन भगवन्तं एवं कल्याणो किति सद्दो अभुगतो इति पिसो भगवा अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो विद्याचरण संपन्नो सुगतो लोकविदु अनुत्तरो पुरुषधर्मसारथि सत्था देवमनुस्सानं बुद्धो भगवाति हन्मयं बुद्धाभिगीतिं करोमसि बुद्धवारहन्त व्रतादिगुणाभियुतो शुद्धाभिज्ञान करुण समागततो बोधेसियो सुजनत कमलं वसुरो वन्दामहं तमरण शिरसा जिनेन्दं बुद्धो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमम् पठमानुसतिष्ठानं वन्दामि तं शिरेणहं बुद्धस्सस्मि दासीव बुद्धो मे सामिकिस्सरो बुद्धस्साम्नियादेमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीहं चरिसामि बुद्धस्यैव सुबोधितं नत्थि मे शरणम् अन्यः बुद्धो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सत्यवज्रेण वड्डेयं तु शासने बुद्धं मे वन्दमानं यं पुण्यं पशुतं इदं सब्बेऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेषु तस्य तेजसा हन्दमयं धम्मानुसतिनयं करोमसि स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मो सन्दिट्ठिको अकालिको एहि पस्सिको ओपनयिको पचतं वेदितव्यो विन्यूहीति हन्मयं धम्माभिगीतिं करोमसि स्वाखाततादिगुणयोग सेन सेयो यो मग्गपाकपर्यतिविमोखभेदो धम्मो पुलोकपतन तदधारिधारी वन्दामहं तमरं वरधम्ममेतं धम्मो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमम् द्वितीयानुसतिष्ठानं वन्दामि तं शिरेण धम्मस्मि दासीव धम्मो मे सामिखिस्सरो धम्मस्सहं नियादेमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीहं चरिष्यामि धम्मस्यैव सुधम्मतं नास्ति मे शरणम् अन्यं धम्मो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सत्यवज्रेण वड्डेयं तु शासने धम्मं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं पशुतं इद सब्बेऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेषु तस्य तेजसा हन्दमयं संघानुसतिनयं करोमसे सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो सामीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो यदिदं चत्तारि पुरुषयुगानि अष्टपुरुषपुद्गला एष भगवतो सावक संघो आहुनेयो पाहुने दक्षिणेयो अंजलिकरणीयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यखेतं लोकसाति हन्दमयं संगाभिगीतिं करोमसे सधम्मजो सुपटिपतिगुणादियुतो यो अट्टविदो अरियपुगलसङ्गसेठो शीलादिधम्मपवरा सयकाय चेत्तो वन्दामहं तमरिया गणं सुशुद्धं संघो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं ततीयानुसतिष्ठानं वन्दामि तं शिरेणहम् संघस्सस्मि दासीव संघो मे सामिकिस्सरो संघस्सहं नियादेमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीहं चरिष्यामि संघस्सोपटिपन्नतं नास्ति मे शरणम् अन्यं संघो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सज्जवज्जेन वड्ढेयं सतु शासने संघं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं प्रसुतम् इद सभ्येऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेषुं तस्य तेजसा
We will now recite the Abhay Paritta and Deva Yojan Gatha, page 133.
अभय परितम यन्दु निमित्तम् अवमङ्गलं च यो चामनापो सपुनस्य सद्दो पापगहो दुसुपिनम् अकन्तं बुद्धानुभावेन विनाशमेन्तु यन्दु निमित्तम् अवमङ्गलं च यो चामनापो सकुणस्य सद्दो पापगहो दुसुपिनम् अकन्तं धम्मानुभावेन विनाशमेन्तु यन्दु निमित्तम् अवमङ्गलं च यो चामनापो सकुणस्य सद्दो पापगहो दुसुपिनम् अकन्तं संघानुभावेन विनाशमेन्तु देवता योजन गाथा दुःखपता च निर्दुःखा भयपत्ता च निर्भया शोकपत्ता च निशोका होन्तु सभ्येऽपि पाणिनो एतावता च अम्हेहि सम्भतं पुण्यसम्पदम् सब्बे देवानुमोदन्तु सर्वसम्पत्ति सिद्धिया दानं ददन्तु श्रद्धाय शीलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदा भावनाभिरता होन्तु गच्छन्तु देवतागता सब्बे बुद्धा बलपत्ता पञ्चेकानं च यं बलम् अर्हन्तानं च तेजेन रक्षं बन्धामि सर्वसो
We listen to a discourse by Carol Wilson. She is a very senior teacher in the IMS USA. 3 talks are there on Anatta. We listen to the first talk today.
So I'm happy to be here. In case some of you don't know me, my name is Carol Wilson. I'm happy to see you all here. So tonight, I want to talk basically about investigating anatta. And it looks like it's going to end up being a two-part talk, or else a really, really long. So I'll make it two parts. And to the best of my understanding, whatever the Buddha taught, when he taught, he wasn't teaching in order to have people acquire another philosophical concept. He wasn't teaching like a body of knowledge that he wanted people to learn. But as he said over and over, he's just teaching what we need to know to free our hearts and minds from suffering. And so that's true also, as with everything, in his teaching about anatta, sense of no self. And I say that because so often this particular characteristic of existence, the three characteristics together with anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, anatta, no self, which are just the way that all conditioned phenomenal existence is. It's just how it is. And of those three, often anatta is the one that makes people crazy. A little bit. I don't mean literally crazy. We're already crazy. If we understood anatta, we'd be more sane. But thinking about it, trying to figure it out, trying to understand it, basically in a philosophical way, that's how we tend to approach stuff, that makes us crazy. And that's not how I want to talk about it tonight. I'd like to just investigate really anatta, or more the feeling of the sense of self in a very concrete way, using our practice in that way. The lights are kind of reflecting in a way that's hard for me to see. So the other thing people often tend to do in terms of anatta, if they're not just trying to think their way through it and get crazy, is to, and so many people say this in different ways, they're waiting in their practice or measuring their idea of if their practice has any benefit by waiting for some big anatta flash, after which everything's changed, no more sense of self, life is copacetic, and there's no more problems. I don't know if that relates to anybody here, but we do. And the other way people relate to that is, but that could never happen to me. That's somewhere else down the road. And all of this is really holding the idea of anatta as some state other than here, something to be achieved that isn't already true, and that's just not the case. As with so much of what the Buddha's teachings reveal, it's simply a matter of recognizing our experience more accurately and then responding to that more accurate recognition in a way, just in the obvious way that makes sense. We stop suffering so much. So rather than waiting around, follow the breath, in, out, notice the sensations, okay, but when's anatta going to happen? Rather than practicing like that, it's more like recognizing when sense of self is present, recognizing when it's absent. And just personally, what I've experienced in my own life is not that there was some big moment after which I got anatta and before which I didn't. But it's more the image that Suzuki Roshi gives of if you go out in a rainstorm and you get totally drenched, you know it. It's not like that. It's more like walking in a fog. And you're walking in a fog and you don't realize you're getting wet. But when you come inside, you're completely soaked through the bone. But you couldn't point to the moment where that happened. So that's another way of looking at it. So what keeps us from recognizing just the way things are, just the facts? Ramana Maharshi wrote once that the idea of self is like a ghost which is caused by the play of shadows. If you look closely, the ghost vanishes. The ghost was never there. So also with the sense of self. So long as one does not look closely at it, it continues to give trouble. But when one looks for it, it is found not to exist. So I think with our practice, with our mindfulness, with the wisdom, satipanya, just mindfulness wisdom at the point of contact, just noticing what's arising, free of conception, we have the tools in any moment, in any given moment, to look more accurately, to recognize more accurately, to really get interested in what am I calling me in any particular moment, if there is a sense of me or mine, or if there's not. There's one sutta where someone asked the Buddha, what is it that liberated ones know? You know, how would you sum it up? I mean, lots of different ways, but in this particular sutta, he says that having heard that nothing is worth clinging to, he directly knows everything. Having heard that nothing is worth clinging to, he fully understands everything. And Bhikkhu Bodhi, in his commentary on this, says, what he does not cling to any formation by way of craving and views. He does not become agitated because of craving, and thus personally realizes nibbana through the extinguishing of all kilesa, of all torments of mind, of all defilements. Does not cling by way of craving and views. Realizes that nothing is worth clinging to. So yes, we're back to the familiar pith teaching, the core of pretty much, if you had to boil the Buddha's teaching down into one little line, that would be it. Nothing is worth clinging to. But rather than going into, oh no, not again, I know I can't give up clinging, what we can do, what I'm proposing, the way I want to talk about it tonight, is rather explore in our own experience the nature of clinging, and in particular, the clinging that is manifesting in any particular moment as a sense of me or mine. Non-clinging, really. Supreme truth, liberation through non-clinging. That's really at the heart of whatever form of practice we're doing. If it's concentration or shamatha practice, it's non-clinging. All the Brahma Viharas, wisdom practice, mindfulness practice, non-clinging is essential. I mean, nothing works when we're clinging. All the practices open up by themselves when the heart and mind is not agitated through clinging. And I'm sure by this time everybody knows from your own experience various ways that clinging is suffering. And it's pretty clear in some way, you know, I mean, we can kind of get it that holding on to particular objects or particular experiences that are going to change causes suffering. I mean, it doesn't mean we don't still do it, but we do kind of have the basic understanding. That's not really rocket science, although we still do it, and that's the interesting thing. But when, on a more subtle level, the clinging that perhaps is more difficult to see through, and in many cases, in my experience, is it's so familiar. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes not, but it's so familiar that it's kind of difficult to recognize, is the clinging to aspects of experience that create the sense of self, basically to form, to mind and form, nama rupa, to the body, to ideas, to perceptions, to thoughts, to emotions, to formations, to views, ideas about ourselves. A lot of these things we don't even recognize are arising, never mind recognize that we're clinging to them. the basic habits of our mind that are based in the inaccurate understanding, the inaccurate recognition of our mind and body. So tonight I want to give more of an overview and just give point to some different ways we can explore when we're clinging in that way. So the first thing really is just to get interested, not afraid of, not aversive to, but interested whenever we notice the feeling of me and mine, of I, is here. Just to meet it as another rising experience, literally the same as you'd notice a sound or you'd notice any other thought. So we need to recognize when it's here, but also recognize, and this is something that Ajahn Buddhadasa, you know, he was the Thai forest monk, very famous in Thailand. He died, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. He talks about the state, that's not a state, but the nature of mind when it's not agitated by clinging, is not distracted by being caught up in reactions to any particular experience, that emptiness of self, it's translated as voidness in English by his translator. I don't like that so much, but the nature of our heart and mind is naturally empty of self, is naturally pure, clear, is naturally peaceful. This isn't some state that we're striving to achieve where we're finally have dug up and annihilated all sense of self and we can finally rest at ease. He points out, Buddhadasa, over and over, that along with recognizing when we're caught up, when there's this sense of me, when there's this sense of struggle or agitation or conflict, it's equally, maybe more valuable and important to recognize the nature of heart and mind when this is not present. That emptiness of self, this kind of natural awareness, peaceful quality, open, luminous quality, freedom from self is, in his words, truly normal and natural. Not a state we create when we get to some high level. It's a truly and normal and natural way that we are. It's really how things are. And so when we can recognize this, recognize when I feel like meing and mying, recognize when that's not there. He talks about, then Buddhadasa talks about generating a contentment with voidness, generating a contentment with no sense of self, with no sense of me or mine. And as I go on, maybe I can, hopefully some of what I say will help point to why it may not be that easy or natural to really have a contentment with voidness. As much as we resist our sense of self, we're back to clinging. We really, in some ways, like it, cling to it. But just a simple example of how we can really see how the sense of me, being there or not, is just a trick of perception. It's not about changing the circumstances. Just very simple. When I was walking home this morning and the wind was blowing and it was really cold. I don't like the cold. My body doesn't like the cold. So I was walking and the wind was blowing and I was feeling my body contracting and shivering, and then the thought coming in, it's too cold, I don't like it, I've got to walk fast, subtle resistance, sense of me walking fast, needing to get home to where it was warm. Now this isn't like some huge, drama, suffering, just very mild, everyday kind of experience, but definitely a sense of me clinging to wanting it to be different, clinging to the sense of hurrying home. But then it can just shift like that from no clinging and no resistance, but just there's walking, the movement, there's the sense of coolness, there's the sense of sharpness, there's the sense of constriction. And that's it. There's no resistance, no clinging, nothing is changed about the situation, but it's just coldness, sensations, walking, breeze. That's it. In that moment, the clinging to wanting experience different, the clinging or the resisting, which is really just clinging turned around, resisting the sensations creates the sense of me. Looking at that, it drops away. The actual situation is no different. The sense of self in that moment just isn't there, and there's no problem. It's still just as cold. My body still reacts uncomfortably to cold. I didn't get home any quicker. It just doesn't matter. It's just not a problem. You can see that's not a big deal. I know, just as Ajahn Buddhadasa said, that everybody has many, many moments like that through the day. Really noticing, not like, oh yes, I'm having an experience of anatta, because then it's gone, you're back, you're having an experience. But just this simplicity of, oh, just this, it's like this. That's the beauty of our mindfulness practice. Buddhadasa likes to use the terms in the Pali language, ahankara and mahamamankara, which translate as I-ing and my-ing. You non-English first language speakers, does that make sense? I-ing and my-ing is making it a verb rather than a subject, which is sort of how it is. Something's being created in the morning, in the moment. And when I-ing comes up, my-ing comes up, it feels really real, doesn't it? Because it feels as though, unexamined, at least to me, unexamined, it feels as though it's always there, doesn't it? I mean, I'm always here. Maybe not my, but I am always here. It's so familiar, and the more I try to analyze it, the more I try to think about it, the stronger it gets, doesn't it? Because I'm thinking about it, and it just gets into this big knot. The way it feels, this is from Dzigar Kangtrul Rinpoche. I like this a lot. He's talking about a Tibetan word shenpa, which he says is usually meant as the raw experience of the suffering of ego clinging. He says it's generally translated as attachment, but that's not sufficient. Shenpa is a pervasive discomfort, the experience of I, me, and mine, all the wants, needs, aversions, hopes, and fears that come out of that. The discomfort of Shenpa can be vague and subtle, like having a stone in your shoe, or a sour note that plays throughout the day. I love that. Just something's a little off, and it just bugs you. Or when the ego is strongly challenged, Shenpa can be the painful charge of the negative emotions. By seeing and accepting the mechanisms of Shenpa and self-importance, they no longer have a hold on us. That's exactly what Buddhadasa is saying. Simply by seeing, understanding, and accepting how this sense of Shenpa, of self, is created, it no longer has a hold on us. The main attitude on the path to peace is to accept whatever our experience brings. Let's accept it and also recognize accurately. So that's what the invitation really is to do with our satipanya, with our mindfulness wisdom, is to get interested to notice the presence of I-ing and my-ing. Whether just when it begins or however long it's been there, it doesn't matter. Notice it. And then really get interested. Bring investigative wisdom, dana vichaya, in to really explore, not thinking about, but by bringing our attention to the actual experience in that moment that feels like me or mine. I mean, I can feel personally, it's different each time, But a sense of a kind of a contraction, that clinging, that holding on to something, that's already saying too much, holding on to something. But just a little sense of, it shrinks, it limits things. But I can feel it. So the first thing, when we start to explore, so this is Buddhadasa, that we see that the sense of self is merely a condition that arises when there's grasping and clinging in the mind. That's all. This big, seemingly huge, endless monolith we spend all our practice trying to chip away and dynamite and fight with and hate ourselves and all of that. And it's just a momentary condition that arises when there's grasping and clinging in the mind. So that gives us a little hint about how often grasping or clinging arises in our experience. Or my experience, I speak for you guys. I mean, I really get it, why it's kind of the centerpiece, non-clinging is the centerpiece of liberation. Merely a condition that arises and passes. Born out of contact with a sense object, with an experience, with a mental object. So I use this story all the time because it's so simple, but it works. Notice the birth of self. It can be really clear. It's great on retreat. You have so much time to explore this. Because when things aren't so busy, when all the activities are kind of stripped away, you can notice in relationship to little things the birth of self. And the self feels just as big. It doesn't matter if it's born in relation to a little thing. So this story I always use. Once I was on retreat over at the retreat center, long retreat, and I was pretty quiet. Things were just flowing. I mean, not always, but it was a relatively, what we call misleadingly, a good time in practice. I was noticing things. I liked how it was going. Not a lot of suffering. And I noticed this one time, over there you walk into the dining room and there's a big shelf with all the mugs and the cups and stuff and the dishes. And at this time, we used to have many, many different kind of mugs. Now they have more similar, but at that time they were all different, just what people had left. And I just go, I'd take a mug, I'd take my dishes, I'd eat, I'd go. And one time way into the retreat, I got a mug, I was getting my tea, and as I sat down, I started, wow, this mug is really the perfect mug. The good color, it fits my hand, it feels good on my mouth. And right in that moment, I like this mug. I want this mug. I want this mug again. And it was so clear in that moment, the birth of me and my mug. It was very clear. So I sat there, and instead of just being present with the tea, should I save it? We're not supposed to save it. Should I take it back to my room? We're not supposed to take it. No one will know, and who cares anyway? But no, then every time I wanted tea, I'd have to go back to my room and then come back here, and at the rate I'm walking, that would take half the day, so forget it. So then I put the mug back. I was death of me and my mug. It was just free and easy and fine. Incredibly complicated. That sense of self made everything complicated. It restricts what had been open, easy, just as it is, gets quite constricted, limited. The mind, the consciousness gets limited. Everything gets complicated. You can feel in that moment the sense of grasping, almost like an inner contraction. You can feel that sense of me, and then all the complications, the papancha that ensues from it. Put it down, went away. It was gone. But I came back the next day and I looked for it. So already there was complication. And I found it. And I took it. And I went through the whole thing again, even more. And at that point, the suffering of it, I know this sounds ridiculous, like the suffering of liking a mug, but when your mind's quiet, you can really see it. This is ridiculous. All this planning, all this agitation, all this wanting, and I put it down and that was it. It was over. If only it could always be that easy. But this is exactly dependent origination. This is the birth and death of meing and mying that happens for each of us hundreds of times in a day. It's a real blessing to notice the birth and notice the death. What we tend to do is we notice the me in my mug, we don't notice the death of it. We notice the me that doesn't like the complication, then we notice the me that's putting it back, then we notice the me that's wanting the next thing. And we forget to notice the times when there's no meing and mying, in between. Really important to notice the birth and death. They say that's the dependent origination. This is from the Buddha, talking about this middle part, the continuation of the round of the dependent origination. On seeing a form with the eye, like the mug, he lusts after it if it's pleasing, or dislikes it if it's unpleasing. He abides with mindfulness of the body unestablished, with a limited mind. And that's exactly how it feels. As soon as there's that clinging to something, the me and my arising, the mind feels limited, the heart feels limited. He delights, and engaged as he is, whatever feeling he feels, he delights in that feeling, welcomes it, and remains holding to it. As he does so, delight arises in him. Now, delight in feeling is clinging. With his clinging as condition, being comes to be. With being as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. So that's, just talking about one moment of contact in this moment of life. That lusting after, that sense of me arising, the constriction of mind, and the whole mass of suffering. So notice when that arises. Notice when it dies. Notice the sense of, it's not like some huge light going off, it's just this sense of limitlessness again, of space, of ease, of peace. The sense of self fades and dies. Anatta is truly normal and natural when there's no grasping or clinging in the mind. It's just the way things are. So I want to just talk about a few areas, and I won't by any means cover all of them tonight, but just a few of the, first the more grosser areas of our nama-rupa experience, of our mind and body experience, that so easily there's clinging to, that creates a strong sense of meing and mying, and that we so often overlook or don't recognize the clinging. I mean, with the mug, I use that because that's a simple, obvious example. Of course, it's recognizable. I didn't think the mug was me, right? It was the me who wanted it. But still, there's clinging to much more from experience that really seems so like me. This is really where the sense of self is. Well, of course this is me. I'm not clinging to it. It is me, right? That's where our satipanya, our mindfulness wisdom, comes in so helpful, our mindfulness practice. So the first, of course, the most obvious, and it's in some ways the easiest to see through too, is clinging, grasping that arises in relationship to sense contact with rupa, with our body, with sense, physical experience. And here, what I found really, really helpful, it's nothing new, it's mindfulness. It's that willingness, that ability to meet with our attention the bare sensory experience, to see and tell the difference, to recognize accurately the sense experience without confusing it with the conceptual overlay. It's what starts to help us see when there's clinging. So just give simple examples. When you're sitting, when you're walking, but just when you're sitting, and there's that pain. We talk about this all the time. The difference between noticing burning sensation, and the overlay, my back is hurting, or I've hurt my back, or I need to do X, Y, and Z. Just sensing. Even more, how often, a little more subtle, is when there's a sense contact, say there's itching, say there's a lightness, a pleasant physical feeling. And the attention just connects, notices lightness. But do you notice how so often there's a visual overlay, just a visual image of the body, or that part of the body, which is fine. If we just recognize this is seeing, and this is feeling, burning or tickling, that's no problem. But when we don't recognize, so often in that seeing, we don't even recognize the seeing, and there can be like a subtle holding to that as the image, the description of my body. Do you see what I mean? So like, I notice when I'm sitting, there can be periods where every single moment there's a lot of physical sensations, and there's just a noticing of it. I don't have to be noting, but just noticing, and it's tightness or burning or tingling, and just there. But with each one, there's a picture of my knee, there's a picture of my back, there's a picture of my whole body, there's a picture of my face, noticing. And if I don't recognize that image, can be this subtle sense of clinging. Oh, that's me. It just feels like me. I'm not saying this is true for anybody else. It's just an example. Look and see. Or I'm hungry. It's the same as when I was walking in the wind today. The difference between sensations, bubbling, sounds, gurgling, a feeling of discomfort. It's just that. I'm hungry. A thought. Just a thought. But clinging to the thought or holding to the sensation is immediately a sense of me. And then when you notice the sense of me, turn your attention onto that. Not fight it or try and think about it, but just notice that's the next arising experience. Bubbling, gurgling, oh, I'm so hungry. Sense of me. Feels like this. Just notice how it comes and goes. Notice how when you're just breathing and there's just sensations of coolness, you can't even say that's a body. Never mind my body. At times there's absolutely no form. There's just sensations, and if you're sitting there and there's sensation, and it's as far as your actual experience, it's sensation arising in space. Can we just notice that? Let it be, or notice if right on top of it comes a sense of, no, my body. And then just notice that. Get a sense of what I mean. Just explore this. I don't want to say a lot more about body because we really pay a lot of attention to that. But I'm talking about the actual experience, not the idea of the body. The idea of the body, of course, we're much more likely to cling to. But that's actually not the physical, that's an idea. That's mental, that's sankhara. Another aspect is Vedana, the feeling tone. You all know what that is, right? The pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling tone. Just, it's a mental experience, rather subtle often, that arises with every sense contact. So every sound, each of us will experience a particular sound as pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, every thought, every physical sensation. And obviously, as we talk about it, because so often it's not the thing we pay attention to, it's often not the predominant experience, but it's very easy for a clinging to arise, an identification to arise, so that we experience, say, the pleasant feeling as being either me or mine, and not recognizing that little clinging is going on. And we can get into quite a little world of identification and complexity based on this clinging to pleasant or unpleasant Vedana. Yes, we cling to unpleasant too. and not recognizing that. It's very easy to overlook. For example, in the sitting, and I just use sitting as examples because that's what we're doing, something's happening, finally it's going right. Either the breath is smooth and the mind isn't wandering as much as it was before, or that's if you're someone who thinks what should be happening is that you should be with the breath and it should be smooth. The person next to you thinks that what should be happening is open awareness, and you're not even really noticing the breath, but the mind is just connecting with each arising experience, and there's no hesitation, and there's no wavering, and it's really clear, and it's really penetrating, and that's what they think should be happening. Someone else thinks something else should be happening. See, I'm just saying this so that you know there isn't one thing that's supposed to be happening. Our thinking that there is the problem. But anyway, it's finally going the way you think it's supposed to be. So take smooth breath, nice, peaceful, really noticing it, being there with it. The mind isn't wandering, and you even think, I know this is going to change. I know this is going to change, and I'm not attached to this breath. You know, I know it's going to change. And of course, it does change. And you really thought you weren't attached to that sensation. So why are you so totally bummed out when it changes? Why, you know? And there's lots of different things. But one thing that can happen is that we weren't clinging. We could see we were clinging to the breath, but we were completely overlooking the pleasant feeling and totally clinging to the pleasant feeling. That contraction of me around that pleasantness. Not even the thought is finally going right. Prior to that, this is it. This is so nice. I remember one time I was on retreat, and I don't even know what was happening, but something in the walking that I thought was really good, and I liked it, and whatever. And my teacher, I think it was Sharon at the time, said, "Okay, you have to note pleasant." That's all she said. I knew it. I went back and had a total little minor temper tantrum because I knew that as soon as I consciously noticed the pleasant, the sense of selfing around it would not keep on being created. Which you'd think I would like that, but we're attached to that. In some way, the sense of self, the clinging, whether it's to the pleasant or whatever, is so comfortable and familiar that even though we think we want to be free from it, given the choice, and we're given the choice millions of times in a day, given the choice, we often go, I want to cling to the pleasant. Don't tell me to notice the pleasant. I'm gonna walk, and I'm gonna note, but I'm gonna overlook pleasant, because if I do that, the gratification of me having pleasant goes away. What goes away? Just that sense of me. That's all that goes away. It's really pathetic, but it is. How many millions of times have I experienced the ease of, death of the self? And how many more millions of times, yeah, but not yet. Let's just enjoy this a little bit. So, just noticing if something's pleasant or unpleasant, if there's that sense of mine or me around it. And just have a kind of an eye out to explore, as Chunky Nina says, really watch the fickleness of the mind, especially in terms of Vedana. Notice in our mind how easily it's influenced just by a pleasant or an unpleasant sight, thought, sound, anything. The mind is so fickle, we just have a pleasant sight and it's influenced into an immediate mood. And then the whole story that comes from it, right? Then there's an unpleasant sound. The mind goes off into a whole other mood, a whole other story. If we just notice that series of events, rather than jumping on each one as, yes, this is me, yes, this is mine, just notice. It's amazing. It's amazing how far the mind goes, how fast, based on how little. And if you can just kind of get interested in watching that, without hating it, without fearing it, without being afraid to see it, oh yeah, look at that me arising so strong about the noise that person is making in this sacred hall. Wow, that's amazing. And in that moment of just getting interested, wow, that's amazing. In a way, that's a moment of death of that sense of self, because the energy has moved from the clinging to I like, I don't like, the pleasant, the unpleasant, to simple awareness. Wow, it's like that. In that moment, that's a death of self. And it's just, I just like to call it like a Tai Chi move. You don't actually have to do anything other than withdraw the clinging, all the identification from whatever's happening, say the pleasant, liking the pleasant, holding to the pleasant, to, oh, holding to the pleasant feels like this. We don't have to get rid of anything. We're not here to destroy the ego. We don't have to be afraid of experiencing a really strong sense of meing and mying. It's just a momentary arising experience, however subtle, however strong. And that freedom from it is just always right here. Ah, meing feels like this. In that moment, that meing has died. Nothing lasts more than an instant anyway. When we're paying attention, we'll see that. We'll see that. We can't not see it because that's how it is. We just, in a way, need to trust that more in our experience. You know, if you feel like you have to set up some kind of amazing conditions in order to create the state of non-self, well, that gets beyond us and way out in the future. But if you really can have it's not a faith, it's just knowing that it's already how it is. There is no steady state you or me. There isn't one. So if you recognize that, your world isn't going to fall apart because it's already like that. That's what's so amazing to me, just to me. Okay, another huge area, and I'll talk a little bit about it, but I don't want to go into too much, is emotions. I find emotions, in some ways, one of the most tenacious aspects of mental experience, tenacious in terms of really feeling like the emotion is me, you know. So often we think the presence of the particular difficult emotions are the barrier to peace, and the presence of the beautiful emotions, when we're clinging to them, can feel like the barrier to peace. But of course it's not. It doesn't even mean the emotions have to go away. The sense of real suffering from them is this identifying with, clinging to them, thinking they are me or mine, either one. So for each of us, I think we each have certain emotions that feel, I was saying to someone today, I forget what words we were using, they feel more like they're really me. Like, for instance, I can have certain emotions that come and I'll really recognize them. Disappointment feels like this. I can notice it. I don't go too far down the road. I know it comes. I know it goes. For many people, the wholesome emotions are like this. They're ones that they easily see are not who they are. In fact, often to the point that they don't even recognize, oh yeah, well, that's happiness. That's not me. That's going to go. You know, you don't give it any weight. But the other ones, whatever they are for you, often they're self-hatred or feelings of loneliness or the judging voice or feelings of worthlessness, or for some people a kind of deep sadness, loneliness, whatever it might be for you. And it can be different for each of us. There's certain ones that when they come in, they're often not even recognized at first because this is really the core manifestation of who I am. And even though it seems like it just arose in this moment, I know that I just haven't noticed it because it's been there all along, but I've been being distracted by feeling the breath and noticing this other stuff. But now, here it is, self-hatred. I'm home, you know? This is really who I am. And we wouldn't say that we were attached to it. Oh no, I'm not attached to this. I hate it, for God's sake. I'm practicing so it'll go away. But in the moments of its arising, there's this is really like a clinging to, this is me, meing and mying, my self-hatred. I'm this loathsome worm, whatever your particular way of saying it is. And the first thing is, this is really one of the aspects of what's called Sakkaya Ditthi, which is like personality or identity view. Really, this clinging to any particular mental formation, sankhara, emotion, as me or mine. So first just start noticing which particular emotions creep in under your radar, you know. And then you might notice the sense of me around them, the clinging. But also, even if you don't notice that, do notice when that emotion goes away. You might not notice the moment it leaves, but notice when it's gone. Just like I was saying, noticing when there's no sense of self. Notice when these so-called core personality emotions are gone. And really notice that they're gone. If your mind says stuff like, well, I'm just not noticing it, it's not really gone because I know it's who I am. Just notice stuff like that. When it's not there, it's really not there. When it comes back, it really comes back. That's okay. But notice how emotions then lead to thoughts like, oh, sadness, this is who I am. This is what my life is all about. And then, of course, the thoughts just carry on, and get so complex. And I think I'll talk more about thoughts the next time. But there's the resistance or the suffering from resisting the emotion itself. And there's also the kind of subtle clinging contraction around it. This is me, this is mine. Notice that. Notice the difference, to use Ajahn Sumedho's language, the difference between, take sadness, like, my sadness, I'm so sad. This is really, you know, the depths of despair. How can I keep going? Whatever your story is. The difference between my sadness and sadness is like this. Feeling it just as fully, perhaps even more fully. Oh, sadness is like this. Despair is like this. Loathing is like this. Joy is like this. The difference when there's the meing and mying and when there's just the emotion as it is received in awareness. This is really a huge difference. You see, we don't have to even fix our personality. We don't have to, with any of the emotions, analyze them. We don't have to get lost in the story about me, and we don't have to push away the story of me. We just notice it. Oh, sadness is like this. The thoughts that arise that make the sadness stronger are those thoughts. How can I feed the sadness? How can I feed identifying with it? Just keep on going into those thoughts. Oh yeah, and another thing. Oh yeah, and another thing. Feeds the sadness, feeds the anger, feeds whatever it is. Tuning back to the awareness. Oh, the sadness is like this. Oh, those thoughts come and go. Sadness is like this. Feeds the awareness, not the sadness. And we can flip back and forth in every moment. And that's okay. It can be fascinating to do that back and forth where you're really feeling the meanness of the I-ness of a difficult emotion. And it's just unbearable. And the next moment is, oh, it's like this. I was in Burma a few years ago, and was really, really one of the more emotionally difficult retreats I've done in years and years. For some reason, just this really intense despair and dukkha-filled emotions would come up. And I was pretty mindful. I was really watching it. I would notice an image come. I would notice the thought. I would notice the emotions start. I was really aware of the whole train, but each time it came, it kept coming so strong, I would get really caught in the newness of it, in the unbearableness of it. I think it was just this emotion, this is too much, I can't bear it. That's actually what the emotion was. And I could see the whole process, but there kept being the sense of me, of mind, in which I really can't bear it. And for a while, I just kept going on like that. I can't bear it, I can't bear it. And finally, I got really fascinated. What is the clinging here? I mean, I'm not clinging to that image. I wasn't clinging to the story. I wasn't really, after a while, I wasn't hating the emotion, but I wasn't holding on to it either. And I kept thinking, like, I'm really seeing the whole thing coming and going. What's the clinging that I'm not seeing? Because I know when I really see, that's me, just in that awareness, it might still be there, but the whole texture of it changes. And this is something I've really been interested in a lot. So what I finally saw was what the clinging to, when that emotion would come up, this is unbearable. This is so intense. The sense of me, not the emotion itself, but just that sense of me, which is very subtle, but just that contraction was so familiar, was so comfortable. That's actually what the clinging was to. Me, it's totally unbearable, but me, I'm home. And that was fascinating. Because since then I can just recognize so often this subtle sense of me that refers experience back to me, and that is just that little contraction of clinging keeps the whole cycle going until the clinging releases. So the question that then came up is not so much about how to understand this emotion, how to get rid of it, how to fix it, how to purify my mind, but really, am I willing to be without self-referencing? Am I really willing to just, things arise, emotions, sights, sounds, thoughts, sensations, whatever, just to be so present that there's not even the tiniest referencing back to me. And that, it's not a choice I can just make in my mind, but starting to notice that clinging to that habit of self-referencing and the feeling at times of disconcertion. No, I don't like to be without self-referencing. This is from not a Buddhist, but a kind of one of these new non-dual guys. Self-referencing is the mind's tendency to locate itself. So when it's realized that there's no self apart from the perceiving, then the tendency to try to find oneself in any experience, insight, or concept ceases. What I'm talking about is a condition where the mind has no compulsive need to understand in terms of ideas or concepts or beliefs. A condition where you are no longer referencing the mind, your feelings, or emotions for security in any way. Just imagine that, a condition where you are no longer referencing the mind, thoughts, feelings, or emotions for security in any way. So immediate. Just what's arising. The sense of self is not some steady, unchanging thing that we have to get rid of. It simply arises in a moment of misperception, of clinging, and it vanishes when that misperception when that clinging vanishes, which of course it will in any given moment. So this self-referencing, trying to locate ourselves with thoughts, with moods, with feelings, with emotions, it's so familiar. We do it so automatically. And often we're suspicious of when we don't do it. But there's a phrase Ajahn Buddhadasa uses. He uses it in another context, but I like it in this one. Of volunteering for suffering. So do we want to volunteer for suffering? Then we can add on this whole sense of self-referencing. So I'll give you a simple example. And sometimes it pushes people's buttons a little bit, so that's good. Sometimes when you're sitting, when I was in Burma one time, I was teaching actually, and you start to get sick. Okay, that's already going too far. That's already making a concept. But this one time I was sitting and just noticing whatever was happening, and I was noticing tickle, 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 and just the different things, and then I would notice cough, cough, and then I was noticing heat, heat, and then tickle, tickle, and this went on. And you know how when you're deep in retreat, you really do stop referencing yourself. You just notice what's happening. You don't put it together into a story. So I was just noticing these different things, and after a day or so, suddenly I went, oh, I've got bronchitis. This is bronchitis. I recognize this. And immediately there was this sense of referencing. This is what it is. This is my history. I've had bronchitis X amount of times in the last 5 years. I get really sick. I can't afford to get sick. When this retreat is over, I have all these things I have to do. And total panic. Total me. A lot of suffering. And I thought, wait a minute. That's a story. Just go back. Tickle, tickle. Cough, cough. That whole thing just completely fell away. Oh. Tickle, tickle, cough, cough. It's just what it is. And then I started playing with it, the volunteering for suffering. I go, but maybe it really is bronchitis and I have to do, and all of the emotions would come back. What am I going to do? I have to go to the doctor. Okay. I mean, my mind was a little bit malleable. I could play with it. But do you get a sense of what I mean? Often we can't play with it. That sense of, I'm going to jump on the description, I'm going to jump on the self-referencing, and once I'm on, there's no way off. Volunteering for suffering. Are we willing to even explore the possibility of being without self-referencing? Then we but the way the Buddha described that, and I'll end with that. When he was talking to Bahiya, this is really that state, not state, but the way of perceiving, where there's no self apart from the perceiving. And the Buddha was talking to Bahiya. He said, when in the seen is merely what is seen, in the heard is merely what is heard. In the imagined and what is thought in the mind is only that. When in the cognized is merely what is cognized, then, Bahiya, you will not be with that. When, Bahiya, you are not with that, then you will not be in that. When, Bahiya, you are not in that, then you will be neither here, nor beyond, nor in between the two. Just this is the end of suffering. Neither here, nor there, nor in between the two. When the seen is merely what is seen, just this is the end of suffering. That's not a steady state. That's in any particular moment. So thank you for listening to the Dhamma.
संक्षेप में मैं हिंदी में बता देता हूँ। आज के पहले टॉक में उन्होंने बताया कि अनत्ता जो है तृष्णा और उपादान के कारण जागता है। और जैसे हम जानते हैं कि जब भी इंद्रियां किसी बाहर की विषय से स्पर्श करती हैं वेदना जागती है, और अगर हम सजग नहीं हैं, सती नहीं है, पन्या नहीं है, तो वेदना के प्रति तृष्णा जागती है, उपादान जागता है, और प्रतीत्य समुत्पाद के हिसाब से फिर भाव, मतलब मैं का भाव जागता है। तो अगर हम सजग रहेंगे ताकि तृष्णा ना जागे और जागे भी तो उपादान तक ना पहुँचे, तो मैं का भाव जागना संभव नहीं होगा। और इसी बात को उन्होंने और कई उदाहरणों से समझाया, अपने जीवन के और लोगों के भी। और ये भी बताया कि अगर वो कई बार जो तृष्णा है एक इतनी ज़्यादा हो जाती है, जैसे इमोशन का, भावना का रूप ले लेती है बहुत ज़्यादा, तो उसको संभालना काफ़ी मुश्किल हो जाता है। और वो ऐसा लगता है कि वो तो मेरे को ही गुस्सा आ रहा है, मुझे ही वासना जाग रही है, मुझे ही भय जाग रहा है, मुझे आशंका हो रही है। तो उसमें उस समय ये बात जो सक्काय दिट्ठी वाली बात है वो सामने आ जाती है कि हम अपने को उससे आइडेंटिफाई कर रहे हैं, जो भी उस मोमेंट पे अराइज हो रहा है हम उसको अपना मान रहे हैं। और अगर हमें ये बात स्पष्ट हो कि जो भी अराइज हो रहा है वो एक इम्पर्सनल इवेंट है, उतनी अगर समझ हो, तो वो जो है हम देख सकते हैं कि गुस्सा जाग रहा है, देख सकते हैं आशंका जाग रही है, देख सकते हैं बेचैनी जाग रही है, लेकिन मैं बेचैन हो रहा हूँ, मैं गुस्सा हो रहा हूँ, मैं आसक्त हो रहा हूँ, वो भाव नहीं जागता। तो फिर मैं का भाव नहीं जागता। तो इमोशन के माध्यम से और इनके तृष्णा के माध्यम से, तृष्णा ही बढ़ के इमोशन बनती है बेसिकली। वो यही इसलिए वो कह रही थी कि इमोशन कि अगर हम सजग रहें, सती पन्या बनी रहे, तो मैं का भाव नहीं जागता। और एक बात जो शुरू में उन्होंने कही और बार बार भी कही कि ये सोचना कि अनात्म का कोई अनुभव हो जाएगा और उसके बाद अनात्म समाप्त हो जाएगा, ये ठीक नहीं है। क्योंकि मैं को अनात्म का अनुभव होगा, ये अपने आप में हास्यास्पद बात है, ये एक बेसिक कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन है। ऐसा नहीं होता। हमको जब भी आत्म का भाव जागे उसको जाग के देखना है, और जैसे ही वो समाप्त हो जाएगा तो उसको जानना है। क्योंकि तृष्णा जो जागती है वो एक तरह से दुखी है, और जैसे भगवान कहते हैं कि दुख को समझना है, तो अगर हम तृष्णा को जानेंगे ठीक से तो उसका निरोध भी हो जाएगा, तो मैं का भाव जागेगा और वो निरोध हो जाएगा। तो इस तरह से हमको साधना करेंगे तो अहम का भाव समझ में आता है और अनात्म के भाव में रहने की आदत होने लगती है अपने आप। तो टाइम है, करते हैं, पूरा कर। तो हम ब्रह्म विहारों का अभ्यास करते हैं। सबसे पहले रोज़ की तरह मैत्री अपने प्रति, प्रियजनों के प्रति और आरक्षण करने वाले देवताओं के प्रति, जो बहुत सहज ही हमारे मन में भाव जागता है, उनके प्रति मैत्री करते हैं, ताकि ये सब हम सब वैर रहित हों, सद्भावना से भरें, दुर्भावना रहित हों, चिंता से छूटें, सुख से रहें। ऐसी शुभकामना करते हैं सबके प्रति, अपने प्रति। अहं अवेरो होमि, अव्यापद्यो होमि, अनिगो होमि, सुखी अत्तानं परिहरामि। मम माता पितु आचर्या च नातिमित्ता च सब्रह्मचारिणो च अवेरा होन्तु, अव्यापज्जा होन्तु, अनिगा होन्तु, सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। आरक्षा देवता, भूमट्ठा देवता, आकाशट्ठा देवता, अवेरा होन्तु, अव्यापज्जा होन्तु, अनिगा होन्तु, सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। मुझे आज ख्याल आया कि हम लोग थाईलैंड में मोनेस्ट्रीज़ में जाते हैं, आपने देखा होगा, ख़ासतौर पर लुंगपुर पियक की मोनेस्ट्री में 4 कोनों पे 4 देवताओं की मूर्तियाँ बनी हुई हैं, जो चतुर महाराज का देवता हैं, जो प्रोटेक्शन करते हैं। तो ये आरक्षण करने वाले देवताओं की बात हमारे भगवान बुद्ध की वाणी में कई स्थानों पे आती है। क्यों कई बार हमको लगता है कैसी अंधविश्वासों की बात कर रहा है। अब सभी समस्त जगत के प्रति, सभी प्राणियों के प्रति, चाहे वो तटस्थ हों या जिनके प्रति मन में कुछ रिजेंटमेंट हो, कोई ग्रीवेंस हो, कोई नाराज़गी हो, कोई गुस्सा हो कि वो गलत काम कर रहे हैं, उन सब के प्रति भी मैत्री का भाव, ताकि वो वैर से रहित हों, दुर्भावना से रहित हों, चिंता से रहित हों, क्योंकि इन्हीं सब के कारण गलत काम होते हैं, और अपना ध्यान सुखपूर्वक रख सकें। प्राणी सभी देवता हों कि मनुष्य हों, आर्य हों कि अनार्य हों, पुरुष हों कि स्त्रियां हों, सूक्ष्म हों कि स्थूल हों, और चाहे नरक में वास करने वाले प्राणी ही क्यों न हो, उन सब के प्रति शुभकामना कि वो सब निर्वैर हों, निर्द्वेष हों, बगैर चिंता के विहीन हों। सर्वे सत्ता सर्वे पाना सर्वे भूता सर्वे पुंगला सर्वे अत्ता भाव पर्यापन्ना सर्वा इत्थियो सर्वे पुरुषा सर्वे अरिया सर्वे अनरिया सर्वे देवा सर्वे मनुष्या सर्वे विनिपातिका अवेरा होन्तु अव्यापज्जा होन्तु अनीगा होन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। अब करना ब्रह्म विहार। अनंत प्राणी इस समय लाखों लोग बीमार हैं, 1 लाख से ज़्यादा लोग मृत्यु को प्राप्त हो चुके हैं रोग के कारण। उनके परिजन लाखों दुखी हैं। हम सब भी घरों में बंद हैं, इम्प्रिजन्ड हैं, उसके कारण भी कष्ट है। तो हम सबका दुख दूर हो, इन सभी रोगियों का, जो रोग से पीड़ित हैं, उन सबका दुख दूर हो, वे स्वस्थ हों। स्वस्थ होने में कोई जो भी बाधाएं हैं वो जल्दी जल्दी दूर हों। जो लोग असुरक्षा के कारण, व्यवसाय की कमी के कारण परेशान हैं, उनकी भी परेशानी दूर हो। सवितियो विवर्तन्तु सुखरोगो विनश्यतु माते भवतु अन्तरायो सुखी विहायुको भवतु सुखी दीर्घायुको भवतु सुखी दीर्घायुको। अब कृतज्ञता ज्ञापन भी साथ करते हैं उनके प्रति। सैकड़ों हज़ारों डॉक्टरों, पैरामेडिक स्टाफ और भी सभी लोग जो आवश्यक सुविधाएं बनाए रखे हुए हैं, आवश्यक सेवाएं चालू रखे हुए हैं, उन सब के प्रति आभार, कृतज्ञता। उन सब के साथ अपने पुण्य आए हम सब साझा करें। जो भी पुण्य हमने आज से पहले किए हैं, आज किए हैं, उन सब में मैं भागीदार हूँ। सुखी रहें, स्वस्थ रहें, सुरक्षित रहें। पुण्यस्य इदानी याना अन्यानि कथानि मे ते संच भागिनोऽन्तु सत्तानन्तपमानका। मुझता ब्रह्म विहार, उन सबको याद करके जो प्रसन्न है किसी भी कारण से, रोग से मुक्ति के कारण प्रसन्न है, उन सब के साथ उनकी खुशी में हम शामिल होते हैं। शुभकामना करते हैं कि उनकी सुख संपत्ति बनी रहे। यथा लब्धा संपत्तितो मा विगच्छन्तु। अपेक्षा ब्रह्म विहार, जो इस समय की बहुत आवश्यक अनुस्थिति है हमारी सबके लिए, चाहे हम दुखी हों, सुखी हों, तटस्थ हों, सबके लिए समत्व का भाव अत्यंत आवश्यक। कई बार कुछ लोगों के प्रति द्वेष नहीं छूट पाता, मैत्री का भाव नहीं होता, तो भगवान कहते हैं कम से कम अपने मन को तो समता में रखो, ये ध्यान करके कि हर प्राणी अपने कर्मों का फल भोगता है, तुम क्यों परेशान होते हो। आए भगवान की यान याद करें। कम्मस्य का कम्मदायादा कम्मयोनि कम्मबन्धु कम्मपटिसरणा यं कम्मं करिष्यन्ति कल्याणं वा पापकं वा तस्य दायादा भविष्यन्ति। धर्म के मार्ग पर चलने के लिए भी उपेक्षा ब्रह्म विहार, उपेक्षा भोजंग बन जाता है। बहुत हम आवश्यक है कि हमारी समता बनी रहे, चित्त चलायमान ना हो, और जब भी हो तुरंत हम उसको वापस ले आएं, क्योंकि उसी में हमारा उत्तम मंगल है। हमने रतन सूत्र में पढ़ा था, यथिंद किलो पथिविंसिया चतुहि वाप्ते ही न संपकंपियो सोपमा तत्पुरुषम वदामि यो अर्य सच्चान अवेच पश्यति। कि जैसे पृथ्वी में गड़ा हुआ खंभा चारों प्रकार की वायु से हिलता नहीं है, उसी तरह के उपमा उसके मन की दी जाती है, जो आर्य सत्यों को पूरी ठीक तरह से देख लेता है। तो ये भगवान की आदेश हमारे लिए, समता में पुष्ट होने के लिए, उपेक्षा बोधिकांग पुष्ट करने के लिए आर्य सत्यों को निरंतरता से देखें, जब जब कष्ट हो, जब जब दुख अनुभव हो, ताकि हम भी ऐसे उत्तम मंगल महसूस कर सकें जैसा भगवान बताते हैं। पुट्टस्य लोकधम्मेहि चित्तं यस्य न कंपति अशोकं विरजं खेमं एतं मंगलमुत्तमम्। हमारी और सब प्राणियों की दृष्टि ठीक हो, ताकि चित्त समता में रहे, सारे कर्म शुभ हों, अकुशल कर्म न हों, ऐसी शुभकामना करते हैं। सर्वे सत्ता सुखी होन्तु, सर्वे होन्तु चखेमिनो, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा किञ्चित् पापमागमात्, मा किञ्चित् शोकमागमात्, मा किञ्चित् दुःखमागमात्। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं, रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता, सर्वबुद्धानुभावेन सदा सोति भवन्तु ते। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं, रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता, सर्वधर्मानुभावेन सदा सोति भवन्तु ते। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं, रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता, सर्वसङ्घानुभावेन सदा सोति भवन्तु ते। अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो भगवा, बुद्धं भगवन्तं अभिवादेमि। स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मो, धम्मं नमस्सामि। सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो, संघं नमामि।